How's it going, everybody? I'm Steve, and welcome back. So tonight I actually have a new haul here for the month of August. If you noticed it in July, I did like a Criterion haul that whole month. So some of these movies kind of stacked up a little bit during that time. But so I actually have 10 new titles here. Actually, seven are new and three are used. But these are all hand-picked titles that I was really excited to go through my list last night and just kind of see ones I'd really like to talk about. So I'm going to show off these 10 titles, and these aren't ranked at all. I'm just going to have like a poster on my left and put a number on it, but they're not ranked. But so this first one I bought brand new. It's from director Alfred Hitchcock. If you've known me recently, in recent months, I've been watching a lot of his movies, and so when I saw this one, I thought I definitely had to pick this one up. But it's the movie is To Catch a Thief. It has Cary Grant and Grace Kelly. Uh, really enjoy this movie. It wasn't like the maybe top tier I thought necessarily of Hitchcock movies, but I thought it was very close to being top tier. It's very strange. The whole storyline is really odd. But I've been watching a lot of Cary Grant movies the last couple of years and enjoyed this one a lot. Just to kind of show the packaging here, it has actually another poster underneath. So it's in VistaVision. I enjoy this one quite a bit. Okay, so the second title is actually 50 years old now. It's from a director that's maybe not extremely well liked necessarily, but it's a movie that I've watched like four times now, and I watched it with the commentary last night, and it's just one that keeps it's growing on me over and over every time I see it. It's except for maybe the last scene of the movie necessarily, but the movie is Chinatown, and it's starring Jack Nicholson as Faye Dunaway, directed by Roman Polanski, but it has a great score from Jerry Goldsmith. At least the score kind of repeats a lot throughout the movie, but I think they had he only had like 9 days to come up with a score with this because I think they fired the composer that was supposed to do the film score before, and they just called Jerry Goldsmith, and he came together and put together this trumpet score to this movie, and I love this. It's supposed to be like the 1930s sometime. It's kind of like a film noir kind of movie, but like I said, it's a movie that just keeps growing on me every time I see it. It's like 2 hours and 10 minutes long, but I love what Jack Nicholson really became a star, I think, in this movie, even though people kind of knew him from Easy Rider and some movies like that before. Okay, so this third title is actually one from the director Cameron Crowe. The first like three or four movies he did were really great. His fifth movie was okay, and then it kind of dropped off a little bit after that. Except for I like the Pearl Jam documentary. I think it's pretty good, but this one is Almost Famous. This one has the theatrical and the director's cut on it, or they call it the bootleg cut, which is much longer. It's like almost like 3 hours long, or 2 hours 45 minutes or something. But that's really interesting. I like the theatrical cut a little bit more. But if you just want to get some of the behind the scenes and kind of extended scenes from the movie, it's great. But I like the music in this. I like the cast. It's overall, Cameron Crowe. He was like a teenager when he started working for Rolling Stone magazine, and so it's kind of based on his life in a lot of ways. Really interesting how he toured with like Led Zeppelin at the time, so and he wrote for Rolling Stone I think through the 70s. I mean, obviously he wrote Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And okay, so the fourth title here is actually I live in Indianapolis, as you can tell. I'm wearing the Colts hat here, but this movie has a lot of special meaning to me because it was filmed at an old baseball field in Indianapolis. It's been closed down now and replaced with a much better facility, but it had a lot of history, and they used it in this movie because it was kind of an old field, kind of had that old time kind of look to it. But the movie is 8 Men Out. This is this is written and directed by John Sayles. It has like Charlie Sheen and John Cusack and Michael Rooker and so many stars that at the time were sort of rising stars, but they to have them all in this one movie is really special. But the baseball field, it was our Indianapolis Indians, baseball team, and then they filmed it in Cincinnati, and they filmed it in Indianapolis. And for me, if you like sports movies, this is kind of that. It's about the Chicago White Sox in 1919, whom they threw the World Series. Basically, it's historic. It's what kind of led to baseball becoming so attached and being very careful about breaking gambling and all that stuff, and it's kind of ridiculous to this point now, to the point where that they leave baseball players out of the Hall of Fame because they suspected that they did like steroids, and Pete Rose is not allowed to enter the Hall of Fame because of his gambling. Okay, so this fifth one is actually the first used one out of this the stack, and it's one I bought at Half Price Books, and I found it for a really good price, cheaper than it was on like Amazon or anywhere that I saw online. And it looked like it was in good condition. But this is one if you like horror movies, I think you'll appreciate this movie. And it's one I've never seen before. It's a total blind buy. But the movie is it's from Lucio Fucci, and the movie is Zombie. This is supposed to be like a sequel to Dawn of the Dead from George Romero. That one, I guess internationally that movie was called Zombie, and this one's supposed to be Zombie 2. But it's very strange. It's in Italian. It has like different languages. You can watch it in English or Italian. Some of it's filmed in like New York, that area, which is very strange movie. Kind of a lot of it were like stolen shots in New York where they didn't have a permit to film, and it just if you'd like zombie movies, this one's like one of the most grotesque kind of zombie movies because it shows like unlike the Romero movies, this one shows like the rotting flesh and all that stuff, and and it's just very interesting. Some of the actors are like English, and some do not speak English, and some do, and very strange. And they show like there's a shot in the opening part of the movie that anytime I see like the New York skyline, I always love to see it because it's back in the 70s. It's like 1979, so it's you see the New York skyline. Obviously, you see a couple of buildings there that are no longer there. I won't get into that too much, but just to see that skyline, anytime I see the New York City skyline, I always love to see that because it's those buildings are immortalized on film. So, okay, so this sixth title is actually a tribute to Alfred Hitchcock. I was talking about him, the first movie. This one is from 1977. It's from Mel Brooks. Obviously, someone I've grown up with, watching all of his comedies and just stuff like Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, and History of the World, and all those great movies. But this movie is High Anxiety, and it's like I said, this is a total tribute to Hitchcock. It's especially like Vertigo is one of the big ones. Psycho is definitely a big one in the movie. There's a parody in this movie of Psycho that apparently Hitchcock and Anthony Perkins both really appreciated, just because I guess Mel Brooks actually met Hitchcock like in the last 3 years of Hitchcock's life, because he lived to be until 1980 at the age of 80, and they got to know it. Mel Brooks got to know him, and had a lunch with him a lot during that time, the next 3 years or so of his life, and but they really appreciated this. I guess Hitchcock has a sense of humor, and he loved it. But ask me in the comments about the scene that the Psycho parody, because Anthony Perkins definitely liked what Mel Brooks did there, because you can totally see it's all comedy. Okay, so the seventh title is actually, I think it's underrated, from the director Richard Linklater. This is one that's starring Jack Black, and has Shirley MacLaine, Matthew McConaughey, but the movie is Bernie. And this is one I had. This is actually an upgrade from the DVD that I had, and it's one I saw in the theater originally, and it's just one I hadn't watched it in a while. But I think a lot of it really holds up. There's a lot of humor in the movie that kind of changes the tone a little bit of the movie, but the movie overall is really a comedy. And so I thought it's probably one of the more serious roles that Jack Black has played, even though it's done totally with a lot of humor. But it's kind of a dark storyline, and very strange, and it's based on a true story as well. So, all right, so this eighth title is actually one I bought used, and it was an upgrade from DVD. It's one I bought for like $7.50 at Half Price Books. It's from director Alexander Payne, and the movie is Sideways. It's starring Paul Giamatti. It has Thomas Hayden Church, Virginia Madsen, Sandra Oh. This one I've always loved. This one I've wanted to see on the Criterion Collection for quite a while, because Alexander Payne only has like Election in the Criterion Collection. So it's one just revisiting it again. I loved it. Just a very slow, kind of artsy, low budget kind of movie. But Paul Giamatti's really great in this. I thought that kind of run back in the 2000s when he is starting to become like a star during that time, and I enjoy it. All right, so this ninth title is actually from director Frank Darabont. It's very strange. I think kind of underrated movie. A little bit too long, like 2 hours and 30 minutes. But the movie is The Majestic. This one's starring Jim Carrey. But it was that string where he was kind of trying to get Oscar nominations, I guess, trying to be taken more seriously. The movie, I think that at the time when this was released, this was like December of 2001, which is not a great time to release movies at the time. Just like what I mentioned earlier about New York and that whole thing, but in 2001. But I think that this is a really good movie. At 2 hours and 30 minutes long, I think it's a little bit too long. And obviously, Frank Darabont did this without using Stephen King, storyline, which he had done with like 3 other movies. He did like The Mist after this one, but The Green Mile and The Shawshank Redemption. Those are all Stephen King stories, and he dared to do one without Stephen King, and I guess it didn't work all that well. But I think this movie, I think at the time it was not going to work because it's really kind of overly sentimental. I think anybody that was around in 2001 will know at that time it was kind of a dark period, and people really weren't into watching movies like this. So I think it's a big reason why it failed. I think, and plus 2 hours and 30 minutes. I think it's just hard to get people to watch those, especially with the movie. It's supposed to be sort of a comedy. So, but I still like this movie a lot. It's just it shows like a movie theater kind of setting. And then this movie recently, the AVA Pop Culture, if you know Chase on my channel, he talked about this movie too, and I told him like I really like that movie. I think it's like I said, underrated, and it's just it kind of flew under the radar just because of the time it got released. All right, so this 10 title is actually one that I think a lot of people have probably never heard of, but it's like a documentary I really like. It's based on a radio DJ in LA that most people have probably never heard of. But the movie is called Mare of the Sunset Strip, and this one's it's starring Rodney Bingenheimer, and like I said, and anybody that grew up in L.A. back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, especially, they'll know who Rodney is because he's well known for giving a lot of bands that no one had ever heard of, giving them a chance, putting them on the radio and making them stars, and like Ramones, and they were a big New York band that most people around the country had never heard of, but Rodney played some of their music, and people all of a sudden, West Coast all of a sudden knew who the Ramones were, and it kind of filtered back to the East Coast basically, and the whole around the country people finally heard of this band, and he's well known for also introducing Gene Simmons to Eddie Van Halen and helping basically get Van Halen their first record contract. And if you look at the Van Halen's debut album, you'll see like Gene Simmons, and then you'll see Rodney Bingenheimer second listed on the thank you list. So this movie definitely means a lot to me. Like I said, that most people have probably never heard of this movie or this radio DJ, but I think it's a great documentary. All right, so I really appreciate everybody watching this video tonight. It really means a lot to me. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please consider doing that. Please put a thumbs up on this video. It definitely helps with the YouTube algorithm. And everybody have a great one.